Well, hello, that's me again. Today is June 5th, 2024, and I will start with many people ask me about the situation surrounding Scott Ritter and absolutely atrocious, behavior of whatever of the powers that be in regards to his travel to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Some people ask me, who is Mr. Zarianov? It's evidently the guy who invited Judge Napolitana to Russia, who was allegedly arrested. I have no clue. I don't know who Mr. Zarianov is. I know who Scott Ritter is, but people stop asking me the questions because they are pouring in like, how you can comment this or that. I don't know. Mr. Zarianov, I have no idea who he is. He is from Novosibirsk, evidently, and as Scott stated, there is some political mayhem surrounding him, and he was taken into custody. Who knows what is going on there? So don't ask me about this. As per moral and judicial, so to speak, assessment of what happened to Scott Ritter, it's desperate measures. It's the powers that be. They try to settle the accounts with Scott, and I'm pretty sure Scott is correct when he states that it's not only sticking it to him. In violation of every single constitutional right, but also sticking it to Russians. I wouldn't call that, some people say the stupidity that because they didn't allow Scott to travel to St. Petersburg, that Russia isolated. Guys, you have to be really, I respect Scott professionally and in human terms, but it's kind of, important footnote, but footnote nonetheless. Reality of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum is so much larger than any of us. And Scott himself stated that it's much larger than Davos, because you obviously have world economies represented there, which dwarf anything that West has now. China alone, just look at this. Russia is officially fourth economy in the world, and you know what? It depends also how you count. It's probably going to be getting up there. So, and this is, so to speak, my introduction to this whole thing, and I will talk a little bit about the D-Day, which the 80th anniversary is coming up next, but let me start with the thing which is so French. It is so... I cannot imagine how French it is. I will start with Leo Tolstoy, From War and Peace, of course, and this is one of the greatest observations, there are many great observations by Tolstoy in his immortal classic, and he describes people of different nationalities, especially those ones who have been actually participating in the Napoleonic War of 1812, in Russian invasion, and as he says, when he describes actually German strategist Pfuhl, he talks about that the Frenchman is self-assured because he regards himself personally, both in mind and body, as irresistibly attractive to men and women. Well, obviously the Englishman is self-assured as being a citizen of the best organized state in the world, and therefore as an Englishman always knows what he should do and knows that all he does as an Englishman is undoubtedly correct. An Italian is self-assured because he is excitable and easily forgets himself and other people. A Russian is self-assured just because he knows nothing and does not want to know anything, since he does not believe that anything can be known. Obviously, about Germans we believe that also. It's it's also very sarcastic and humorous. The German is self-assured, is worst of all assurance, of all stronger and more repulsive than any other, because he imagines that he knows the truth. Science, which he himself has invented, but which is for him the absolute truth. So, but in terms of French, he is absolutely correct, and you can see this immediately when actually today Paris reacted to the words of Russian diplomat about military instructors. The French foreign minister threatened the comments of the Russian diplomatic mission in Paris regarding the possible dispatch of French military instructors to Ukraine would not remain without consequences. So, well, basically Russian embassy said that, yeah, you can send whatever you want, they all will be killed. Simple as that, so you send them to fight Russians, you're gonna get killed. This outrageous statement that will not remain without consequences, said French Foreign Ministry Deputy Spokesman Christophe Lemoyne. His comment is quoted by Agence France Presse. Well, that's everything you need to know about French. Even today, and you can see yourself that number of them have been taken prisoners of war, many of them have been killed, more will be killed. The fact is these people think that they are something special or somebody special, that nobody can touch them. Well, I have news for them. Seine has just received the main river on which the Paris is standing. There have been 50,000 cubic meters of the sewage, poured into the river. So Mr. Macron, who promised before the start of this, basically, I think so, the last Olympic Games, which anybody will watch at all, that he will swim in Seine. How about he does that and shows us how this, how the Seine is doing? And well, many people still consider the fact that the issue of the, so to speak, the problem, I would say, that with the bed bugs, French surrendered, and so goes for the issue of the Paris smelling with urine and things of this nature. Wonderful Olympic Games are coming. So, but let's start now with what everybody is talking about, and my friend Larry Johnson spoke about, and Douglas McGregor speak about it. It's about the fact that this Russia is, as Larry Johnson put it, is flashing red, and nobody pays attention in Washington. I would I would put my own twist on that, because I listen to a number of the Russian political specialists and people who really know what is going on in many respects, some of them of the level of the members of the State Duma. In other words, they are congressmen, the equivalent of the congressman with the United States. And they say that, there is about this so-called escalation, which is primarily verbiage, because obviously nothing new really did happen so far. Ukraine continues to shell and launch at Russian territory as it did for the last year, and it's all using their, NATO weapons. But they think that at this stage, especially considering the fact that of the agenda dominating the, so to speak, news, if you wish, with Trump trial and things of this nature. And actually, what happened to Scott is one of these demonstrations and signs of the desperation and panic, really. And Washington needs to change the agenda dramatically and the narrative. How you can do that? Well, one of the theories which goes is the fact you can do it by brinksmanship. And for some reason, Washington thinks that it's really good at war and it's really good at brinksmanship. And they want to maybe turn their, how to say it, bring everything to the verbal intensity of the Caribbean crisis, of the Cuban Missile Crisis, create this Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0, and then Biden steps in and resolves it. And here we are, we have the president who is a peacemaker and a great, conflict resoluter. So, is it possible? Oh, absolutely it's possible, but primarily, and I in this case want to quote my good friend Dmitry Orlov, it's all primarily his histrionics. I mean, most of it, because nothing happened militarily which changes anything. And the fact is that even those, they make the new corridors to, and to accumulate 300,000 troops of NATO, primarily American, in Europe, and they, as if they want to fight Russia. No, they are accumulating them primarily in the Western Europe. Those whole corridors, and again, it's histrionics, it's PR, it's spin. They think that they can move 300,000 troops to their front line if, and that's the point, Russia suddenly decides to attack West. Why? I mean, why do you need Poles and Romanians being conquered and sitting on Russian balance, being fed with those investments and, economic projects while still, quietly hating Russians? Russians are not stupid. I mean, but all this is just basically motions. They need to present them because as we go and look again today at the armed forces losses, you can say yourself, I mean, 1,600 every day. It's just unbelievable. Russians wipe out their brigade worth of the armed forces of Ukraine, and including all kinds of those so-called advisors. And as you can see yourself, just for today, 17 tanks and APCs, 23 armored vehicles, 50 artillery and mortar pieces, 55 UAVs, and 2 MLRS. So 1,590 killed and wounded. So again, right off the brigade. But because we have people of this nature, and let me tell you, Raja Menon would know the difference between the, platoon on the offensive or defensive, but he is strategist nonetheless. And in foreign policy, he writes, now it's not the time to negotiate with Putin. Putin doesn't impose himself in terms of negotiations, so yeah, it's entirely for West to decide. But here it is. This guy, actually, in this piece in foreign policy, which is the, neocon rag together with Newsweek, he writes about the fact that Ukraine needs counteroffensive. Well, they tried to do counterattack, if you wish, 2 days ago in the Kharkov area, and what can I say? Didn't end well for them, but here is the issue, and this is where we have to get into the neck of the woods, so to speak. We have even Colonel Davis and Colonel McGregor holding the conversation yesterday about, and the topic of this is just, could U.S. Army beat the Russians? Well, Colonel McGregor says no, but generally, you shouldn't have been even bringing this up. There is United States Army never could defeat Russians on the battlefield except for the very short period of time in the early 90s when there was a complete political, economic, and military mayhem and how to put it politely, chaos, in Russia, and the warm civil war was starting. So other than this, I mean. And Colonel McGregor says things which I've been saying them for the last 10 years. And he actually says that TOE, Table of Organization and Equipment of the U.S. Army, is that of the force stuck in the 1990s. It is technologically 1990s. It is backward if you look attentively at the weapon system and how they perform. And in the end, so NATO wants 300,000 people. Well, just to give you an example, right now Russia has around 670,000 people at the line of the combat contact along this 1,000-kilometer front in Ukraine. And yeah, if they want to have the counteroffensive, which they desperately need before this clown show in Switzerland, so-called Ukrainian Peace Conference, initiated but obviously State Department, but Zelensky obviously is a huge part of this. Nobody is attending it, where I already spoke about this last time, but obviously they need some kind of the PR success and to declare something, because the only thing they can do is PR. And there is a very simple point of the military science. It's called required force. In Russian, it's called Naryad Sil. How you calculate it? No, you do not, as I already stated, you do not calculate in just the simply, numbers, just direct numbers, comparison of the, let's say I have 200 tanks and he has 500 tanks, and obviously by the pure simplest differential equations by Osip of Lanchester, obviously the guy with 500 tanks should win. But that's not how it works, especially this is not how it works in the modern battlefield. And when you look attentively of what United States Army can bring on the battlefield, you saw it all. It's what Ukraine has brought onto the battlefield, and it ended up in disaster, ranging from the inability to even use their precision-guided munitions because the Russians, jammed them dramatically, and so, for example, Excalibur effectiveness dropped their smart munition, their round. It went from 78% to 6. So, and when you look at those numbers, I mean, that's pretty much what you have to keep in mind in terms of the combat effectiveness. And, I've been through this before. I will repeat it again, and I will continue to repeat it again over and over again. You do not compare just numbers. You compare the combat effectiveness of the forces. And when, for example, Lieutenant Colonel Davis and Colonel McGregor speak about this whole situation, United States doesn't have experience whatsoever of defending its operational rear. It has none, zero. And we're not talking about the fact that they can launch some kind of number of the aircraft. You know what? It absolutely doesn't work in the modern battlefield against forces which have air defense and air forces like Russia does. So good luck trying them dealing with that. So, and that question, obviously, how to put it politely, yeah, that's what I've been talking about, that, plans for potential Russian conflict, and as Telegraph report, senior strategists, somebody, land corridors and all that, it's all garbage, basically, because in the end, as anybody will tell you, Russia has a very impressive and ever-expanding satellite constellation, which is, of course, very good optics and very good infrared and even ultraviolet and things of this nature, so which are there, and they're being launched every other 2 weeks, if you take a look at it. And some of them we don't even know what they are, because they are merely reported as they're being launched for the interest of the Russian Defense Ministry. So the question is, do they really want to start the war in Washington? Obviously, there is nothing more they would want better than is that Russia responds at some, European countries, including, for example, some nukes, non-strategic nukes. You don't need to strategically nuke, for example, some Zheshov. Would they want that? Oh, absolutely. And this whole idea, they want Europe to burn, and because they are one-trick ponies, they say, you know what, we're going to repeat the World War II, post-World War II situation. We go in while everybody is ruined, and here we are. The problem, of course, they are not good strategies. There are no good strategies in the United States. There are certainly no good, actually competent military people anymore, with the exception of some dissidents on the military field like Mr. McGregor. The rest of it, obviously, they paraded themselves as military amateurs who know only how to fight in third world forces. And when you look at this, it's just, sure, they would like nothing more than, Russia response at some NATO bases. Will they actually escalate after that? Not necessarily. And I can tell you one thing which you have to understand. They would want, probably in the scenario where United States becomes the, instigator of the Cuban Missile Crisis for the benefit of Mr. Biden and his elections campaign, and for his attempt to become the president of the United States again. So, I mean, if there are people who will vote for him. So, possible? Certainly possible. But the point is, militarily, NATO is nowhere near, technologically, let alone in the quantity, and how to fight Russia. They don't have forces. If they want to experience a catastrophic defeat, humiliating defeat, and considering the fact that the United States is inherently nuclear-biased nation, especially due to their conventional weakness, we might get this situation getting up there to this level. But we'll have to wait and see. And here comes this fundamental thing, which is obviously when you look attentively at the Time magazine, it's like, oh my God, we're the world power. How Joe Biden leads by Massimo Calabrese, Washington, and it's Time magazine. Yeah, sure, yeah, everybody believes that Mr. Biden leads, but look at this. These people are just absolutely fundamentally funny. Look at this. And the very interesting thing which they post here is this clarifier. On June 6, Biden will travel to Normandy. Obviously, it's the 80th anniversary of the D-Day. He will arrive as the 12th and certainly the last American president who was alive on that day in 1944. When, and read this, what is interesting. 73,000 American troops led the largest amphibious invasion in human history, accelerating Nazi Germany's defeat and Europe's liberation. They use a very interesting term, accelerating. Well, that's true. Obviously, it was a very great operation. It was indeed biggest, largest amphibious operation, and nobody wants to diminish in any way or degrade the heroism and dedication of those Allied troops. And don't forget, 73,000 Americans, guess what? There were more Britons and the Empire troops, including people from Canada, from New Zealand, from Australia, from Poland. So, and there was a large operation, no doubt about it. And he is saying that the president says, commemorating, it is as much about the future as the past. We are playing that role even more. Biden says we are the world power. Well, yeah, United States is the world power, but the point is it's the quality of the world power. And many people continue to parade this whole idea about the, how to put it politely, empire, if the United States is an empire in essence. The problem is all those parallels with those empires do not work. The only reason being, let alone when somebody has audacity and arrogance to compare United States to a Roman Empire. I'll give you a hint, guys. All those empires, they had a stellar military record. They won their wars. United States won their wars against their, second to third rate enemies. And even then, not really won it. It's actually a losing record, military record. And when you compare to the empire's past, you will see yourself that, let alone goes to Rome, it's a stellar and incredible military record, including fighting the, peers and defeating them. Carthage, the land of Est, and all that, Carthago, the land of Est. So, and even Time makes this, thing that whether his view of America's role in the world will outlast Biden presidency is an open question. Well, it's not open question, it's pretty self-evident, but the point is that they continue that, here it is, Biden says he remains committed to Ukrainian victory. Ask about the war's endgame. Biden says peace looks like making sure Russia never. Why did he say only 4 times? How about more? Let's repeat after me. Never occupies Ukraine. Well, obviously Biden, being a rather second-rate lawyer, doesn't understand that Russia is not willing to occupy Ukraine. What Russia is willing to do, which is coming to the head pretty soon, is to, erase Ukraine as such from the face of the earth. And Russia is not going to occupy all those west of Kiev lands. Why? So, but that's Biden. But last year's Ukrainian counteroffensive was a failure. Well, sure it was. Everything is a failure. Russia recently has made its largest advances since the opening months of the invasions. Again, you talk to people who are graduates, most of them, including from Pentagon, from the School of the Advanced Studies from Hollywood, from 1970 movie Patton, and they think that the only measure of their advance is, just, how many miles you took. Well, obviously you still use those metrics, but they do not understand that in the end, the final objective is to annihilate your enemy. All those advances, actually, all those geometric or geographic measures or metrics which they use for some reason as the criteria of the success, are secondary. They are consequences of you annihilating your enemy, not running like crazy, along the roads and, chasing some kind of the metrics and numbers, which you'll say, oh yeah, you see, I advanced 200 kilometers. Yeah, sure. If it is, flat land without any resistance, you could have advanced probably even more. But that's the thing. These are people who do not understand. Because they do not understand, because practically all American history of the World War II was confabulated. And here it is. On balance, however, even long-time critics are impressed with Biden's effort in Ukraine. Former Defense Secretary and CIA Director Robert Gates, and you can stop here. Robert Gates is I don't think so. He is really up to his task. He is not aware situationally right now. I don't think so he ever was. I remember him reading the lecture in one of the Seattle hotels. I believe it was Mayflower or something like 90s. And he was saying, if need be, we can create, such a pain for Russia. Yeah, sure. So he evidently didn't understand what Russia was going through already in 1990s. But you cannot fix this. The clockwork is broken. And this is what I want to bring up. By no means degrading the heroism and accomplishment of people who have been there on the beaches of the D-Day tomorrow, 80th anniversary. Here is David Eisenhower, the grandson of Ike. And this is what he talks about it, you see? And this is the guy who definitely knows about it a little bit more than any kind of the, CIA-hired Wehrmacht historian or whatever. And so he talks about Operation Bagration, which, as Russians promised in Tehran 1943, will follow the Allied landing. In correspondence between Churchill, Roosevelt, Eisenhower, Marshall, Brooke, and Smuts, there is a scant reference to Russian destruction of the German Army Group Center in a matter of 5 days, while the British and Americans remained pinned in a 60-mile strip of northwest France. Is information was sketchy, or perhaps the omission is an instance of what Butcher had called suppressed emotion that would interest a psychiatrist. Well, guess what? The suppressed emotion already was then to actually rewrite the history of the World War II and belittle everything Russians were doing, the Red Army doing on the Eastern Front. And in early July, to ensuring destruction of 3 German armies, the erasure of 25 German divisions and 300,000 men. So it was more than that, but we can forgive Mr. David Eisenhower because he was operating primarily, as most of the American historians, on the Wehrmacht fairy tales. All those guys, from Manstein to whoever worked in Manteuffel, you just go on and on and on. The guys just basically confabulated this whole history of the World War II, sometimes assigning the numbers to Russians, which are just absolutely ridiculous, and of course decreasing their numbers, so to create this fairy tale about extremely effective Germans. They were effective, make no mistake, great soldiers, and for the next 4 weeks, the Allied press would watch on with admiration and a touch of unease. Shortly, Eisenhower would receive a note from Harriman in Moscow, telling that the intense interest of the Red Army staff in the film of the Supreme Headquarters Allied Europe had sent to a military liaison office in Moscow of the Overlord invasion. 2 marshals and 200 or more generals and staff officers witnessed the film. In postscript, Harriman intimated that he had seen Stalin that day, who was describing Overlord as unheard of achievement. Harriman may have been the unwitting conduit of an implied affront, for if Overlord had been an unheard of achievement, what words could describe the still greater victory on the Eastern Front? And here we have some recount of the Operation Bagration, which started on the 22nd June, 16 days, well, roughly 2 weeks after the Allied landing. And here we have the RIA News, which is based on the real historical documents and the real statistics of Red Army, general staff and Stavka documents. And here it is. Bagration is considered the largest offensive operation in modern military history, and of course one of the key and successful during the Great Patriotic War. And they talk about the preparation for this in April 1944, obviously in anticipation of the Allied landing, as was promised. And so we have now this Bagration. So the operation was carried out by the forces of 4 fronts. That means 4 army groups. First Baltic, the first Baltic, first, second, and third Belarusian. These are 178 rifle division, 12 tank and mechanized corps, and 21 brigades. From the air, the troops covered 5 air armies. The total strength of the Soviet group exceeded 1.2 million people. More than 4,000 tanks, almost 5,000 aircraft, 34,000 guns and mortars. And so they have been obviously partisans. The scale was unprecedented of this operation. And so if you take a look attentively at what real sources report, the wooded marshy terrain also played into the hands of obviously Germans and Wehrmacht, and they had created a defense in depths of up to 250 kilometers deep. And in total, the Army Group Center had about 900,000 personnel, 10,000 guns and mortars, 900 tanks, and 1,350 aircraft. And the Soviet command faced a very difficult task. The idea of Operation Bagration was to break through the enemy defenses in 6 directions. And so they did. And let me tell you this way. And here we have the situation. Here, just get these numbers, guys. So, for 68 days of fierce fighting, because obviously Operation Bagration lasted more than 5 days. It was the 5 days which was already 300,000 of Wehrmacht have been erased from the battle order of battle, and the losses of Red Army amounted to more than 700,000, 65,000 people killed, wounded, and missing. Of this, 178,000 are irretrievable losses. These were losses which are KIAs and missing in action. So their success of the Belarusian operation made it possible to deliver new powerful blows to the German troops in the Baltic states, Poland, and East Prussia. The defeat of Germany in Belarus forced the German command to transfer significant reserves from the Western Front. Thereby, the Allied armies that landed in Normandy were able to conduct their offensive operations in favorable conditions. Oh, absolutely. And here it is. Already then, you had this situation. Already then, 1944, the total losses of Wehrmacht amounted to more than 500,000 people. Of the 179 divisions operating in the Belarusian direction, several dozens were completely destroyed. Half lost their combat capability, losing more than 50% of their personnel. Hundreds of thousands of Nazis, including 21 generals, were taken prisoners. And guess what? Of course, already then they started their doubt everything, which they do till today. The results were grandiose, but the Western allies doubted their veracity. Then the leadership of the Soviet Union, USSR, decided on a unique demonstrative action. On July 17, 1944, a march of captured Germans took place in Moscow. 57,000 Nazis, led by their military leaders, marched through the streets of the city. Slightly less numerous parades took place in Kiev and Minsk, so you can count another. So more than 100+ thousand have been paraded in Russian cities just to demonstrate a little bit of the, so to speak, catch as the result of Operation Bagration. And guess what? Since then, we have only one thing on the mind of the Washington politicals, that they won the World War II. Well, what can I say? As already stated, I doubt most officers in the US Army even know the history of the World War II, except for those glorious, the dashes by Patton against the 10 operational tanks of the 3 so-called armored division in Lorraine campaign. So, but this is what we are facing today. And the bluff has been called, and they are desperate because no matter what they do, United States, unless it goes into the full-blown conscription, and creating the army of all those, softened wussies, and the social media influencers who want to go fight Russia, I have news for them. United States has no force, be them personnel, let alone technologically, to sustain fight against Russia in Eastern Europe. Not that Russia really cares about Eastern Europe. Russia will create the buffer zone or cordon sanitaire, from Ukraine, and nothing could be done about it. And that's why there is this desperation and all kinds of recycling of things which have been there from the get-go. It's like attacking Russian territory, attacking Russian civilians, or as many people think, yeah, there was an attack on this early warning radar. But again, what you saw, those were photoshopped pictures. There was an attack. That damage was, I mean, there was no damage. It never was really out of action in any way, not to speak about the triple redundancy of those systems. But again, you have to explain it to people constantly, including all those, photos of shooting down or, blowing up all those, how to put it politely, S-400s and S-300s. So this is what I wanted to tell you today. And so I know I'm not high priest of anything, and I'm not a preacher. But I want to tell you that while definitely, and I was on record for constantly about it, hey, buckle up and, prepare for the really violent ride, I don't think so we are in the World War III as in the nuclear exchange. Can Russia do this? Oh, absolutely. Russia cannot will strike anything, including the U.S. territory, and it will be extremely accurate and probably, a classic counterforce, mode. But are we facing the real World War III? Well, we are in World War III, but it's kind of different type of World War. You know what? Military professionals and strategists and intel professionals, they assess things and make conclusions based on the composition and the size of force. NATO is no way near in the same universe, forget about vicinity, with any kind of force to even try to fight Russia, which, by the way, has, if anybody forgot, about 600 plus thousand people in reserve. And those are not your media influencers. Those are the guys who are extremely capable and well trained and extremely well armed. So, and that's what I wanted to tell you today, guys. So yes, keep in mind, keep your mind open, keep an eye for the events. Nobody says it may not, degenerate into some kind of war, especially considering the fact who those people in Washington are who conducting this so-called foreign policy. But believe me, I have all reasons to believe that they are in panic mode, and the only danger from this panic mode that they can do stupid things. And maybe, yeah, the brinksmanship idea is not necessarily, not good. They might try to play brinksmanship in order to boost Mr. Biden's ratings, poll results. Could they do this? Yeah, that's the only thing they know how to do it. They only know how to do PR. How to fight war? Nope, they don't. So that was my talk to you today, guys. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please support me on the Patreon or buy me a coffee and too. And I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.